You have probably heard the Stoic advice before. Control your emotions. Accept what you cannot change. Stay calm when everything falls apart. It sounds simple. But there is a problem. If ancient Stoicism was really just about keeping your composure, why did its founders spend decades studying logic, the nature of the universe, causation, and human knowledge? Why did they build an entire philosophical system around something that today is often reduced to a few motivational quotes? The answer is that the calm was never the philosophy itself. It was the result of something much deeper. The ancient Stoics believed that a person could not learn how to live correctly without first learning how to think correctly and understanding the nature of the world they lived in. For them, logic, physics, and ethics were not separate subjects. They were parts of one system. And they had a surprisingly simple way of explaining how all three fit together. They called it a garden. Picture a fertile garden surrounded by a strong protective wall. The wall represents logic. Its purpose is to protect everything growing inside from whatever could destroy it. For the Stoics, logic served the same purpose within the human mind. It protected us from false arguments, contradictions, bad assumptions, and mistaken judgments. Before you can live wisely, you first need to know whether the thoughts guiding your decisions are actually true. A person can have good intentions and still make terrible decisions if their reasoning is confused. Stoic logic was therefore not simply about winning arguments. It was about protecting the mind from being controlled by false beliefs. This mattered because the Stoics believed that events themselves were not always what disturbed us. What often caused our suffering was the judgment we attached to those events. Someone insults you, and that insult is one thing. Your immediate conclusion that you have been humiliated, that you must retaliate, or that the situation is unbearable is something else. Between the event and your reaction stands your judgment. Stoic philosophy tried to create enough distance between the two for you to examine what your mind was actually telling you. Is this event really as terrible as I think it is? Have I mistaken an unpleasant experience for a genuine evil? Am I responding to reality, or to the story I have created about reality? Beyond the walls of the garden lies the soil, the trees, and everything that allows life to grow. This represents physics. For the ancient Stoics, physics was not simply the study of physical objects. It was the study of nature itself, the structure of the cosmos, the forces connecting everything together, and the rational order underlying reality. The Stoics believed that the universe was not a meaningless collection of disconnected events. It was an ordered whole governed by what they called logos, a rational principle present throughout nature. Human beings were not separate from this system. We were parts of it. That idea changed the way the Stoics understood human life. If we are part of nature, then we cannot expect reality to constantly adapt itself to our personal desires. The universe does not owe us success. Other people do not have to behave according to our expectations. Events will not always follow our plans. Illness, aging, loss, failure, and death cannot simply be negotiated away. Understanding nature therefore meant understanding the limits of our own control. The Stoic did not try to become the master of the universe. The goal was to become capable of living rationally within it. This is what the famous Stoic phrase about living according to nature actually meant. It was not simply a romantic instruction to spend more time outdoors. It meant bringing human life into harmony with the way reality actually works. Human beings possess reason, so we should use it. We are social creatures, so we should treat others justly. We are mortal, so we should understand that our lives are temporary. We exist within a larger natural order, so we should stop imagining that every event must conform to our personal wishes. And then there is the fruit. This represents ethics. The entire garden ultimately exists so that something valuable can grow. For the Stoics, that fruit was virtue. Wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline were not simply concepts to memorize. They were qualities that had to appear in the way a person actually lived. You could understand complicated philosophical arguments and still be selfish. You could know everything about Stoic physics and still behave cowardly. You could memorize every teaching of Zeno and still be ruled by anger. Knowledge only becomes philosophy when it transforms character. This is why the Stoics argued that virtue was the only genuine good. Wealth can be useful, but wealth does not make you morally good. Health can be desirable, but being healthy does not make you wise. Fame can give you influence, but it can disappear overnight. Political power can make you powerful without making you just. All of these things can change because of circumstances outside your control. What matters most is the way you judge, choose, and act. The Stoic therefore asks a different question from the one most people naturally ask. Instead of asking, "How can I make sure nothing bad happens to me?" the Stoic asks, "How can I remain a good person regardless of what happens?" That is a much more demanding question. It does not promise a life without suffering. It demands that you develop a character capable of facing suffering without allowing it to dictate your moral choices. This is also why ancient Stoicism was much more complicated than the modern image of emotional suppression. The Stoic ideal was not a person who feels absolutely nothing. It was a person who understands their impressions and judgments well enough that destructive impulses do not control their behavior. A Stoic could experience grief. A Stoic could feel pain. A Stoic could become afraid. The philosophical challenge was to examine these reactions rather than automatically obey them. If someone insults you, you may feel anger immediately. But the Stoic asks what the anger is based on. If you lose your wealth, you may feel fear. But the Stoic asks whether the loss has actually destroyed the things that make you a morally good person. If someone rejects you, you may feel humiliation. But the Stoic asks whether another person's opinion can truly determine your worth. The goal is not to become a stone. The goal is to stop allowing every external event to control your inner life. This leads to one of the most famous ideas associated with Stoicism, the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. We cannot control other people's decisions. We cannot control the weather. We cannot guarantee our health. We cannot prevent aging. We cannot determine exactly how other people will judge us. We cannot command the future. But we can examine our judgments, make choices, form intentions, and decide how we respond. Stoicism places moral responsibility primarily in that space. Physics explains why so much lies beyond our control. Logic teaches us how to think clearly about it. Ethics tells us what to do once we understand it. That is why the three parts cannot simply be separated. Logic without ethics can produce a brilliant person who uses intelligence for selfish purposes. Ethics without a proper understanding of nature can become detached from reality. Physics without ethics can become nothing more than knowledge about the universe. The Stoics wanted all three working together. The garden metaphor captures this perfectly. The walls protect the garden. The soil allows it to grow. The fruit is the result of the entire process. Logic protects the mind from false judgments. Physics gives us an understanding of the natural order. Ethics produces the character that allows us to live well. Remove one of these elements and the system becomes incomplete. This is why reducing Stoicism to individual quotations can be so misleading. A sentence such as "control what you can control" sounds useful, but the ancient philosophers were asking much deeper questions. What exactly is within our control? What is the nature of the person doing the controlling? What is the universe in which those choices take place? What makes an action genuinely good? Why should virtue matter more than wealth, fame, pleasure, or power? What happens when our personal desires conflict with the natural order of things? These questions were not side issues. They were the foundation. Zeno created the basic structure of the school, but later Stoics developed it much further. Cleanthes strengthened its spiritual and theological dimensions, while Chrysippus transformed Stoicism into an extraordinarily sophisticated philosophical system. They developed theories of logic, causation, nature, human action, knowledge, and moral responsibility. The Stoicism that eventually influenced later Greek and Roman thinkers was therefore not simply a collection of comforting advice. It was the result of generations of philosophical work. The ultimate goal was demanding. The Stoic philosopher was supposed to bring their judgments, desires, decisions, and actions into greater harmony with reason and with the natural order of the world. Instead of constantly asking why reality refuses to give us what we want, the Stoic learns to ask what reality requires from us. Instead of treating every unpleasant event as a catastrophe, they examine what has actually been lost. Instead of allowing wealth, reputation, political influence, or social approval to determine their worth, they focus on the qualities of character that remain within their agency. And this is where the garden becomes more than just an ancient metaphor. You can memorize hundreds of Stoic quotes and still never cultivate the garden. You can repeat that you should accept fate while becoming furious whenever reality refuses to follow your plans. You can talk endlessly about resilience while never examining the judgments that make ordinary events feel unbearable. You can tell yourself to remain calm without understanding why you are losing your calm in the first place. The ancient Stoics demanded something much harder. Training. They wanted philosophy to become a daily discipline. Every impression had to be examined. Every judgment had to be questioned. Every desire had to be measured against reason. Every action had to be tested against virtue. The purpose was not simply to know Stoic philosophy but to gradually become the kind of person capable of living it. That is why the calm Stoic you see in modern motivational quotes was never the starting point. It was the harvest. Behind that calm stood the walls of logic. Beneath it lay the soil of physics. And from the entire garden came the fruit of ethics. The Stoics were not simply trying to teach people how to stay calm when life becomes difficult. They were trying to build a human being whose character could survive reality itself.